Hi, everybody. I'm here with Elyse Archer. Hi, Elyse.
Hi, Laura. I'm so excited to be here with you today.
I am so excited that you're here because you are the founder and CEO of She Sells. I almost said She Shells. She
It happens. Not the
It
first time it's
happens,
happened.
right? It happens. But you really specialize in helping women be able to sell in a way that's very authentic to them. And you have this incredible way of incorporating mindset and coaching and support in that helps people on this healing journey that probably they didn't expect when they just wanted to increase their sales. Is that right?
It's so right. Yeah. And like anything, it comes from my own personal journey of struggling in those areas for many years. So I'm an open book and I'm happy to share whatever is helpful with your audience. But yes, I used to think it was all about just having the right sales script. And my experience has been that's 5% of it. And the rest of it is how you think about it and what you think you're worthy and capable of.
That's so good. Yeah, because everybody just wants the script, right? Like
Mhm.
they just want to say, tell me what to say so that the money comes like flying in through the windows. So
Yeah.
let's talk a little bit about your personal journey for a minute. You were saying that this was something that you had to uncover for yourself. How did that get started?
Yeah. So my own personal journey and what I love helping women with now is really learning how to trust yourself again. And that was a lot of my background is growing up as a very, intuitive, sensitive little girl. Like I think many of us can relate to. I learned to stuff and suppress a lot of my instincts and emotions as a child. I think for any of us I think every child is very sensitive and intuitive. I don't think there's anything different about me in that way, but I always just sensed some tension in my household growing up between my parents, and no one ever talked about it. Though it was like something we never talked about. We very much had like the kind of the perfect facade on the outside. Um, and I love both of my parents dearly, and they are like my best friends now. But they, they were having challenges in their marriage, right? But we never really talked about it. So that ended up manifesting as a full blown eating disorder in my teens that I carried for 17 years actually of struggling with very much disconnected from my body
Mhm.
and always seeking outside approval, outside validation. So I sought that in money and I went into corporate sales after college. And of course, because I needed to feel validated and feel like I was successful. I worked myself to the bone to get to the top of the leaderboard. And I did bring in, I was making good six-figure income in my 20s and bought the dream house, the dream car, had the life on the outside that I thought was going to make me happy. But what people didn't know was that I was still struggling with the eating disorder, telling nobody about it. I was in a marriage with a man who was a recovering alcoholic and was struggling with a lot of his own addiction issues. And I was in extreme anxiety all the time. And it was so my norm that I didn't really know there was any other way. But I reached a point where I decided 28 has always been a special number to me. I was born on the 28th. I've just had a lot of cool things in my life happen on the 28th. And it was right before my 28th birthday. I decided I was not available to live that year of my life in that way, in that stress and
Mhm.
anxiety. And I started my personal development journey. And it was a lot of releasing of things that I thought were me and things that I thought I needed to be quote unquote successful and safe in the world, but that were really making me miserable. So it was getting healing for the eating disorder, leaving the marriage. Yeah. And then I ended up leaving that corporate sales job to go out and become a sales coach and an entrepreneur. And so that was all, 7 years ago. But along that journey, and part of what has kind of gotten me to where I am today is that as I started this healing, I realized that it was like no matter what I did, even in my own business, I kept bumping up against an income threshold. So
Yes.
it was like I could bring in low six figures and then nothing I did mattered to change it or to bump it up. It was like I kept hitting that low six figure range. And it's good money. And I was grateful for it. But it's not the type of money that created the lifestyle and impact that I really feel called to create in this world. And so this is actually some of this stuff is recent, which is fun. Towards the end of last year, at the time of this recording, so towards the end of 2020, I did exercise with my coach that I thought was going to be a very benign exercise. I was like, oh, this is just another fun coaching exercise called your 5 dream lives. And so you literally like you sit there and you map out, if I could have 5 dream lives, what would they be? And like no consequences or limitations. And I was sitting there mapping these things out. And it was like, I want to pay for my husband's medical school. And I want to, so I got remarried in the process. I should probably give that,
Yeah.
yeah, give some context. Like I want to pay for his medical school. I want to create a sanctuary where animals and people can come to heal. I want to be more involved politically. And I looked at all of these dream lives and they required a great deal of money. They required 7 figures, multiple 7 figures, 8 figures. And I remember looking at them and then like looking at people who had done these things and saying, what am I waiting for? Like,
Hmm.
who am I waiting to give me permission to actually do these things and start living out my purpose and do these things that I see other people doing? And I made a decision in that moment that I was going to do whatever. I was going to trust myself, learn
Hmm.
to trust my body again, like really deepen into greater trust myself in whatever the intuition was, whatever the download was, whatever the nudge was, I was going to follow it to step up and get out of this level of thinking that I had been at that had like kept me stuck at this level of financial results. And one of the first nudges that I got was to hire a woman as a coach for $50,000. Now, as you can imagine, as a woman who had brought in a little over $100,000 the year before, this was an extremely uncomfortable financial move, nor did I have $50,000 sitting around for private coaching with this woman. But the nudge was so strong and the instinct was so strong, like, you have to do this, that I scraped the money together to do a down payment and a deposit on the coaching package with her. And I said yes. And in that moment, Laura, everything shifted. Within 6 weeks of making that decision, I went from having $10,000 months to having $100,000 months. I dropped the limiting beliefs around money.
Wow.
I, everything, and even though I had healed a lot of the anxiety that I still had low grade anxiety around like money and sales and clients, and I healed it. And so that's why I'm so passionate about mindset now, because I realized it wasn't the script. It wasn't like a certain technique that I had to use to make that leap. It was like, no, I had to learn how to embody the mindset of a woman who brings in 7 figures in her business. Part of that is investing at that level and then just doing the things that showed up and that terrified me, but starting to think as that woman. And the shifts happened really fast with that. So that's a very long answer to your question,
Yes, so
but
that's
it's, yeah,
fascinating. Like, what are some of the things you did in that first, what was it, 6 weeks? You
yeah,
said 9 weeks? Like, I
six
mean, part of it
weeks.
must have been structural too, because
Sure. Mhm.
$10,000 a month business can't fulfill at $100,000 a month level. That's what's going through my mind. Because of course I work on more on the strategy side. So I'm
Yeah.
thinking, okay, like what did you break in your business that made that possible?
Yeah. Yes, there was definitely structure. So I did everything that terrified me in that amount of time. So from a structural standpoint, this coach and I came up with a new business model for a group program. And I had actually had a limiting belief around not being able to fill a group program.
Mhm.
And so that was part of the mindset, was like, no, like you do have something that's valuable to women. You do, like, women want to be around you. I'd had limiting beliefs around like not having girlfriends and not being able to
Yeah.
hang out with other women that were really pervasive, like hangover from my 20s. And so I had to really heal that, but then just, launch this program in faith. Because one of the things that I've learned, I study a lot of the quantum physics and the energy and the science behind it too, is you can be attached to the what, but not the how. So I made a decision when I made that investment and decided I was no longer available to play small in any area, that I was going to have a 7 figure business, that I was going to be able to pay for my husband's medical school and take care of our son and all of that. But I didn't know how it was going to come in, and I had to be okay with that. So in launching this program, it was an energy of unattachment to it having to work, because I think that's where we can grip and strangle things, because we're like, oh my God, if this doesn't work, I'm a failure. Right.
Mhm.
So it was more, that's where the mindset piece came in, of like visualizing every day and feeling gratitude every day for that money before it came in, and seeing myself as a 7-figure business owner and like, how does she feel? How does she show up? And then just starting to act as if before it happened, trusting that
Wow.
whether it was through this program or something else, that money was going to come in.
Hmm.
And it came in through the program, but if it hadn't, it would have come in another way. And I know that. And so that's, yeah, but it can happen fast when we get out of our own way.
That's so incredible. So
Mm,
when now that you're in that coaching role, right? So you were being coached, which transformed your thinking, which transformed your money situation.
yeah.
Now that you are coaching others in the same context, what are some of the things that you find are the key factors in skyrocketing their income?
Yes. I find one of the biggest things that holds people back, Laura, and specifically, I would imagine, I don't know if most of your listeners are women or not, but I would imagine probably a lot of them are. And this was my own story, is actually not feeling worthy of the money that you want. So having limiting beliefs around money is a really, really big thing. So healing that relationship with money is huge. And this was, I didn't understand why for so long I had limiting beliefs around money, and why my own money story was like, I can make it, but it might go away. And I'm scared that it's going to leave, even though that had never really happened. And
Yeah.
through studying this, what I've learned is that money is actually root chakra. So money, so for any of your listeners who study energy systems of the body or who are familiar with chakras, meditation. So root chakra is your first chakra, your first energy center in your body, and it's all about security. And so as you're growing up as a little kid, whatever the dynamics are with your parents, whatever they are security to you, whatever those dynamics are will later play themselves out in your relationship with money. So I had a fear growing up that my dad was going to leave, even though he never did, but that was that was just kind of like a pervasive fear as a little girl. And so when I put two and two together later and learned this, it was like, oh, that's why I'm afraid. Like money's always there, but I'm always afraid it's going to leave. Why? Because money's just energy. But so knowing that if you had a dynamic with a parent where they weren't there, or you were afraid they were going to leave, or you had to like really perform to get their approval and their love, that can create a limiting belief later on in life that you have to work really hard for money, or that, if you're not worthy, like you have to explain why you're worthy of what you want and why you're worthy of money. So what I've learned, and I do use a lot of spiritual teaching with my clients, so I hope that's okay, and I'll share that here, but the universe doesn't give you what you want, it gives you what you are. So if you say, I want a lot of money, like I want to bring in a lot of clients, I want a lot of money, but you have that energy of needing it, of not being worthy of it, then they can't come. So you must start to feel worthy of the thing that you want. And then you become more of an energetic match for it. So I think that's a huge thing. I think the other thing is like visibility. A lot of the clients I coach struggle with some fear of visibility, fear of judgment, right? Fear of being seen. And so I think the more we can heal that, and sometimes it's just ripping the band-aid off. I've got a client who I was coaching today, and she's a beautiful woman, but a lot of her story's been around hiding behind other people and helping them build successful businesses, but not her own. She's an amazing singer, and she hasn't sang publicly in years. And so it's like, it's time to sing publicly on your Instagram. So you're going to do that this week and just rip the band-aid off and realize that you are safe in doing this
Yeah.
and having that healing journey. So there's a lot of different things, but I think those are some of the most important for sure.
That is so incredibly powerful. And anybody who has grown a business financially has probably experienced that, like without being able to put it into the words that you've beautifully articulated. And I think sometimes that discomfort, right, as the money's coming in and as the business is growing, do you feel like it has so much to do with your self identity than it does really with the strategy that's driving those monies, the
Yeah.
dollars?
Oh, totally. And when you learn too, like how the brain works. So from the ages of 0 to 7, you're basically under hypnosis. So you're basically a giant walking subconscious. your brain hasn't yet formed the higher faculties, which are the ability to analyze and discern what's true for you or not.
Oh, wow.
And so from the ages of 0 to 7, you're just taking it in, you're absorbing. And so if you, whatever you hear someone to say about money, about worthiness, or even just stuff you pick up on energetically from your parents, the people who are raising you, you take to be true for yourself. So you create, Bob Proctor calls it your paradigm. It's like your viewpoint of the world. And there's no filter. You don't have the ability to filter. So if you hear your parents arguing about money, even if it's behind closed doors and you're not meant to hear it, your 3-year-old, 5-year-old brain takes that in to mean money is bad. Money makes people argue, I don't want money. And then you wonder why later on in your adult life, if a lot of money comes in, like let's say you win the lottery, or you grow your business and you scale it to a certain extent, and then it's like you're stuck. All that means from the mindset standpoint is there's some sort of a program running right now that tells you that you can't have what you want, or you're stuck and you can't go beyond that level. And so we must learn to create subconscious programs and rewire our brain for the success that we want, to be able to sustain that level of growth, to feel worthy of it. So it's so critically important.
That's incredible. So, when women actually start to sell and they start to make offers, is there a way that they can do that so that it feels incredibly authentic to them? Because I'm hearing you speak and I'm thinking, gosh, anybody who might have self doubt, or anybody that might have had from 0 to 7 some subconscious money messages, and then they try to go and make offers. I can imagine all of this colliding, right? So, how do you do it in a way that's authentic, but also not authentic to the wrong side of things, if that makes any sense?
Yeah. The biggest thing I think, Laura, is coming back to knowing how money works and knowing how some of just like universal laws work as well. So I can get into this if you want, but the thing is, you can't make any clients your source. So again, you can be yeah, you can be attached to the what, but not the how with it. And this was a big, and I'd love to hear your experience with this too. Like for me, coming from corporate sales, there was so much pressure on every like pending opportunity in the pipeline. Like, what's up with this deal? What's up with that deal? Why hasn't it closed yet? And I would put so much pressure on myself because I didn't know any of the stuff we're talking about today. I was like, if I don't close this deal, I'm going to have a bad month. I'm not going to be at the top of the leaderboard. I'm not worthy. And so we can carry that with us into, especially like if you're running your own business and selling your own thing, there's even the more mixed up dynamics of like, oh, this is me now. So sometimes that can
Right.
feel more challenging to sell our stuff. So the biggest thing is remembering you can be attached to the what, but not the how. So when you're selling, you get to be fiercely attached to, I'm bringing in this amount of money every month. Like that is my requirement. This is what I need. This is what I require. You don't get to be attached to who it comes in from. And I think that's one of the biggest things is when we can release that attachment to how it's meant to come in, then we just show up and offer. And one of the women, you've been on my podcast. I loved the interview with you. One of the other women who was on my podcast, Holly Martin, talked about, she built a 6-figure network marketing business pretty fast. And she said, she just thinks about like she has a pack of gum and like she's got 3 sticks of gum in it. And she's just offering those sticks to people. So she's like, hey, you want some gum? You want some gum? You want some gum? And people want it, great. If they don't want it, that's fine too. Like it doesn't really mean anything to her, but it's that level of unattachment to the outcome that I think is so important.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that. That's incredible. And I know you asked about my experience, and I shared a little bit about it on your interview. And for me, the loss was more imprinted at the age of 40 than probably the age of 5, where I experienced total loss of a company that I loved. I had built to multiple 7 figures, scaled successfully. And it was a combination between some of the interpersonal dynamics of people that I had in my organization that I probably didn't have healthy boundaries with. I didn't necessarily approach it in the best way when it came to boundaries, since they had a lot of access to me and my company that they probably shouldn't have had in retrospect, and or they should have. And that was my lesson to learn, right? And then also the outside environment changed, the industry changed, and it resulted in bankruptcy. And so if anybody's been through personal bankruptcy, you know how humiliating it is. You know how shameful it is. You know how, especially in my shoes, going from such a high level of success and recognition in my industry and being in working mother and Inc. and entrepreneur, and then being in a bankruptcy hearing, right? And having that be public and knowing it was going to be in the newspaper, and my husband saying, this is going to be, this is public information. It was very embarrassing. And I think from that point forward, growing something again, growing, and I had quick success with the businesses that I started after that period, just as much as I had prior. But the mind work was at a totally different level, because I was the girl that went through this story, right? And I went on my healing journey around the story, but then I had to rewrite that story quickly, because I didn't necessarily want that to be my story. So I had to kind of keep rewriting the story I wanted to live in as I was scaling in a totally different way that I had experienced when I built my first seven-figure company, multi-seven-figure company. And that has been just this incredible identity shift. And what I found is, even recently, I started a new company, as you know, with Kelly Roach, and it was very successful off the bat. And then I found everything shifted around me. Like, my nanny turned over, but like all of these shifts happened because my energy shifted, moving back into this new place. What was very interesting is that when I built companies in my 20s and 30s, I had no awareness around it, right? I had no understanding. And now I have this incredible like observation of realizing, like, wow, my ability to enjoy this process has a lot to do with a lot of what you're sharing. And so I just wanted to share that story because I know it's so in your wheelhouse. And it's something that you probably have incredible insight on that I can't even see right now, having been through it.
Yeah.
But it is this vulnerable, it's something, it's kind of a vulnerable share, to be
Yeah.
honest, because it's a really, I'm an Enneagram 3. So my identity is very much based on my own success. And that was also something for me to shift too,
Mm. Oh
as
my
I was
gosh.
kind of reinventing myself.
Yeah. I think there's so much. So I'd love to just like reflect for a moment on some of what you shared, because I think it's so powerful. And I love like just hearing that story too. Um, because I think the mindset that we must have as entrepreneurs is that everything's always happening for us.
Yeah.
It is always happening for us. And that, sharing that story about that level of loss, I had a loss, but not at that level. And I'm sitting there like, yeah, I can feel that pain in that moment, right? Of what that was like. But I think part of what you're doing, part of what I love about I love a lot about what you did, but one of the things that I love is that you were proactive about scripting out, what's the identity that I need to take on in order to have this be what I want it to be. And that's it. Like, that's really what I think I stumbled into it when I made that investment in the coach that like helped skyrocket everything. But
Yeah.
it was like, I realized there's something in my identity or in my way of thinking that's holding me here. So I need to know how someone thinks at this next level. And that's the identity piece, because we tend to form, like neuroscience shows, by the age of 35, like your identity is pretty set unless you proactively go out and start shifting it and writing a new story. So you can, but it takes being intentional about it. And then the other piece is, as you elevate, it's like you raised your frequency, right? You raised your vibration. The people around you will either be able to stay at that level or they won't. And it doesn't make them wrong and you right, or vice versa. But I've got a client right now who's going through this, who she's making some big up levels in her business. And it's like suddenly all her people are quitting or resigning. And
Yeah.
she's like, what's wrong? What's
What
going on?
happened?
And so, but we have to remind ourselves, like, with the mindset of everything's always working for us, all that means is that those people aren't the people who are meant to help you get to the next level. That's all it means. And so knowing that they're just opening the door for that next perfect person to come in, as I'm guessing you experienced with nanny and with team and with staff, is like, oh, so this is a universal law, vacuum law of prosperity. We've got to create space for new before we can have that come in. And so you were just creating space for new. And did you not have the right people show up
Yes.
to
I mean,
help?
it's incredible. And I think as I'm listening to you, I mean, we could probably unpack this for longer than we have
Yeah.
this podcast scheduled for, but I think What's really interesting as I'm listening to you speak is prior. So this podcast is called Scale with Joy, and it's this idea of scaling joyfully. And it was really my personal passion project on looking at why it wasn't joyful to grow a multi 7-figure business the first time, and how somebody like me or my clients can do it again differently. And what I've observed within myself hearing you speak is that actually I would constantly lower myself to the frequency of the people that I was surrounded by, and then try to drag them up the mountain, and then lower my frequency and drag them up the mountain. And it's because I'm smart and talented and I was good at what I did. I could grow it to that about 2 to 3 million, and then it broke. And I
Mm.
think that's what happened. Instead of allowing those people, because when you're a loyalist, sometimes you end up feeling very much like those people need to come with you, even if they don't have your best interest in heart, or even if they don't have the business's best interest in heart, that they need to come with you because they were there in the beginning stages. And I think what I've learned now is like, let that happen. Let it unfold. Don't grip on to people that don't need to be there anymore, who may be kind of turning against you as your success is becoming apparent, or they're maybe a little jealous that you ended up in the magazine and they didn't, right? And so let that happen, right?
Yes.
Show them the door. It's totally okay, and
Yeah.
then new people will come. And from as for many years I was like, how did that happen? It was such a great business, had great structure, it had checked all the boxes, right? I was over delivering in all areas of the business structure. And I think now, as I'm still kind of unpacking that and learning from it, listening to you, that was one of the ahas I just had.
I think that's so good. Yeah, I think that's the word that keeps showing up for me lately is surrender. It's like
Yeah.
the more I surrender and release control, because no doubt, just hearing you talk, my own story, I'm guessing a lot of your listeners, a lot of how we achieve success is by like, oh, I must control this and I must
Yeah.
try it in all this areas. And so my own experience has been the more I surrender and let things flow, which is bringing more of the feminine into my business,
Yes.
um, the easier it is. And it's like, it's not on you or me to decide who is meant to go up to that next level along with us. But I love what you said of like, oh, I would lower my vibration, try to drag them up. That's never going to do it. And I think the other thing that stands out to me from what you shared, because this has been my experience too, is that when the faucet just shuts off and it's like, I was doing everything right.
Yes.
Like I was checking all the boxes. I was doing everything right. And it just shut off. Like, what happened? Right. And we think God is punishing us. We think we did something wrong. All that that means is you're being invited to go in a new direction.
Yeah.
You're just being redirected. That's it. It doesn't make it feel easier in the moment for sure, but I think
No, yeah.
knowing that helps, you
Yeah.
know?
I think that for me, I wouldn't have wished what I went through on anybody. It was
Mm,
so, so hard. The relationships that fell out, the people
yeah.
who showed up at my bankruptcy hearing trying to buy my trademarks off of, the trustee who wasn't very interested in selling them, and their temper tantrums and crying and things like that. I mean, it was really it hit me hard because I thought I had good relationships. And I think that as I have grown through that, a lot of times the things that we think will hurt us, or be the end, is the catalyst to a kinder, gentler version of ourselves, right? Because we can't grow any other way. And I am now wiser and kinder and more intuitive and more helpful to the world because of that experience. And it's just cool. You and I are having this amazing connection right now that other people get to participate in because of that experience, right? And that's
Exactly.
what this entrepreneurial journey is so incredible at, right? It's giving us the opportunity to become new versions and better versions of maybe who we are or who we were originally designed to be.
Oh my gosh. I love that. I think it's Laura, to me, it's felt like it's like a releasing of layers.
Yes.
over my life. Like you build on all these layers. Like you learn at some point in when you're a kid, you learn you're not enough, you learn you're not good enough. And then you go on this journey of like achieving and striving. And oh, if I just make this amount of money, then I'll be worthy. If I just do this, then and it's never enough. And so I think one of the biggest ahas for me was realizing that the only reason I wanted more money, the only reason I wanted more of anything was because of how I thought it was going to make me feel.
Right.
Right? Like I wanted more money because I thought it was going to make me feel more at ease, more expansive, more peaceful, more abundant. But that you can feel that now. Like we're in full control of our feelings. You can feel that now. And why not choose to feel that regardless? Because your outer circumstances will always shift to mirror your inner. That's how it works. So you can create that outer reality, but it must start with how you feel first. And that's part of why I also love like scaling with joy, because if you're scaling and it's a grind, and if you're scaling and you're in anxiety, and if you're scaling and you're like, and your family is falling apart, that's not, that's not worth it. So it's learning to enjoy the journey because there is no destination to it. There's actually, the destination is we reach the end of our lives and that's
And that's it.
it. But
And
so you might
nobody
as
cares. Yeah. And at that
yeah,
point, nobody cares how many Instagram followers you have.
right, exactly.
Nobody.
Exactly. Yeah. I think if we
Yeah.
just give ourselves permission to like relax and enjoy, and then energetically, like you let in and attract more, and you attract all that stuff that you were striving for and thought was going to be hard to get. We can let it be easy if we want to.
Yeah, I love that. We can let it be easy if we want to. It's a
Yeah.
perfect way to conclude this incredible
Mm.
conversation. And I know so many people are going to be listening and want to connect with you. So if they would like to touch base, what's the best way for them to do that?
Oh, thank you so much for asking, Laura. So I'm at Elyse Archer on all social media. And I know, most podcast listeners will listen to a total of 7 podcasts. So if I am honored to be in that 7, along with Scaling with Joy and your other favorite podcasts, you can listen to She Sells Radio. We've got an amazing interview with Laura on there as well. And I think we've got more great resources like this if you enjoy this type of conversation. So yeah, thank you so much for this opportunity.
I know so many people who love your podcast, so it's
Mm,
so worth a listen. So please go visit Elise's podcast. You can link into it in the show notes, and we just really, really appreciate you being here.
thank you.